Welcome, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. We are here with Jamie Holt. He is the co-owner of Holt PT and a sports orthopedic physical therapist. And he's going to help us learn how we can help our patients with ACL recovery, including using the AlterG and more. Jamie, thank you for joining us, and take it away.
Great, thank you for having me. I'm excited about spending a little bit of time with everybody this afternoon here in eastern part of the United States, and probably late morning over there where you are. So listen, so the ACLs, that's one of the things that at our clinic we do the best, and so we were really excited to get our AlterG treadmill to help take our rehab with ACL patients to the next level, even though it can help a variety of different types of patients. I'm going to talk primarily about our ACL patients today. This is a young lady here. She played soccer, obviously, at Clemson University. Unfortunately, tore her ACL, which is not uncommon for a female soccer player to tear their ACL. And 1 year to the date after ACL tear against the same team, she scored her first goal back. So this was her moment there. She was pretty excited about that. Excuse me. Tell you a little bit about myself, just so you kind of get an idea of my background. I attended East Carolina University. Where I got my bachelor's in exercise physiology in '95, master's in exercise physiology in '97, and my master's in physical therapy in 1999. We have our own private practice, my wife and I, here in Raleigh, Holt Physical Therapy Performance Training. And for the 7+ years prior to starting my own clinic, I was a physical therapist for the Carolina Hurricanes, where I received my CSCS in 2010 and became a board certified sports PT in 2012. Our clinic, like I said, it's in Raleigh, North Carolina. Our website is holtpt.com, and you'll see some of the videos that I'm going to show you brief clips of here today. There's more extended videos on our website if you want to check that out and use it with any of your patients. Feel free, but we're a small family-owned private practice that we cater to the athletic population. We now have 6 physical therapy teams. What I mean by team is we have a physical therapist and an athletic trainer working as a team. And quickly, early on in starting my practice, I wanted to consider getting an AlterG treadmill, and my wife, she handles the financial side of everything, and we were trying to find the right time to do it, and it's been invaluable to us in terms of marketing and getting different clients, particularly runners, ACLs. And like I said, we currently have about 40 post-op ACLs on our caseload right now. And I think a lot of that is due to just what we can do with our protocol, which you'll learn a little bit about today, but also what we do with the AlterG. We've developed this thing called the ACL Institute at Holt PT. There's a lot of I saw a study not too long ago that 90% of ACL reconstructions in the United States are performed by surgeons who do less than 10 a year. And I speak with some of our orthopedists here in the area, and they're astounded by that statistic because ACL reconstruction isn't general orthopedics. It really does take a surgeon who does a lot of them, who's skilled with his hands and skilled, when there's an issue that comes up. And so a general orthopedist isn't probably going to do a good job, certainly with our active athletic, maybe professional population. Part of our institute, and what goes along with that is the skill of the PT. A general orthopedic PT can maybe take a regular average ACL and get them back to regular and average, but everybody out there, I think you're investing, your time right now into your education, and we all want to do better than we can currently do. And so that's why we really push and market our ACL abilities. Kevin Wilk is big, doing a lot of research in that, as long as Dr. Andrews is as well. And as you all know, he had this quote. So the number one predictor of a successful outcome after ACL reconstruction is the experience of your surgeon and experience of your physical therapist. So the more experience we can get as clinicians, the better will be, the better outcome the patient will have. And that way you can build up your volume and your caseload in terms of ACL patients, if that's something that you like. We obviously like them at Holt PT because they're motivated to get back. They work really hard, and it's just a fun journey along the way. Also, what we have involved in our ACL Institute is we give them a packet at the very beginning, which has a lot of the exercises we're going to do throughout the series. It's got a copy of the AlterG protocol that we're going to use in terms of running on the AlterG. There's many bands in there. We also have a nutritional guide that they want to follow, because we're a big believer in nutrition. Can make a good athlete great, and it can make a great athlete good. So nutrition plays a big role in post-op recovery. One of the other things that I think is unique to what we do is we have our ACL patients. They receive an email from me every 2 weeks, and it's set up on a template, and what it tells them is, congratulations, you made it to 2 weeks. Here's what we've been working on the past couple of weeks. Here's what to look forward to and where we should be going in the next couple of weeks. And so it just kind of gives them an idea of where we're going, what our goals are, and it kind of gets them more involved in their rehab. Not that most of them need it. So I came up with these 7 keys to optimizing your ACL rehab. And if anybody, I'll send you my protocol. I got no problem of it. If you shoot me an email or reach out to me through social media, you'll see that our tags at the end, our handles. But it's not a secret. I want to share it with as many people as we possibly can. But I think these are 7 keys that we really need to emphasize with our patients. And the first one, and possibly the most important, although I think all 7 are critical, is we have to get extension early and often. If we get behind the 8 ball where they've got an extension lag or a little bit of a flexion contracture, we're going to spend weeks and weeks and weeks trying to overcome that, when we should be spending that time working on balance, proprioception, and strengthening. So from the very first visit, I'm sure everybody's working on doing, patellar mobilizations, extension mobilizations, maybe some soft tissue work if they need it on the IT band, calf, hamstrings, but then also get them going early extension and weight bearing. So here on the picture on the left, we've got a buddy of mine, Trey, and we're sitting there working hard on getting his foot placed onto the step, getting his knee lined up correctly, and he's got to get all the way stepped up to get his left knee in full extension before he puts that right foot down. They have to get used to using it. What happens a lot of times is they don't like getting it to full extension because they've had an injury to the ACL. They didn't have a ligament for a while that checked that. So they feel if they get their knee to full extension, then it may slip out on the back on them a little bit. They feel they've had that feeling of instability in the past. So we got to get them to full extension, but just as important as getting them to full extension is teaching them how to control unlocking out of extension. That's the critical part when it goes in terms of going down steps, running, doing more functional moves. So get it early, get it often. Picture here on the right is just one technique we use that we send the patients home with to really work on what can they do at home to work on their extension. And this is it's a slide out of one of our videos on our YouTube where they'll be in tall sit, so you can really get a stretch on the hamstring and calf. Extension hangs, they have a bolster underneath their heel, over pressure with his left leg, and taking a rope and pulling back the right foot. So he's got to stretch all the way from the insertion of the Achilles all the way to the ischial tuberosity where the hamstrings attach. And then he's doing a glide to help gain that extension. That's one of my favorite ones for that. So number 2 is learn to trust the knee. Okay. This gentleman actually, he did not have ACL surgery. He has an ACL deficient knee, and we had to work with him and teach him how we could get him strong enough and trust his knee. And we do that early on from the very first visit. I want them putting weight on it. We'll do weight shifts side to side where my shoulders are their crutches. They'll do diagonals, calf raises, mini squats. We need to get them trusting that knee early on. There's something called Wolff's Law. And the general basis of it is things don't get stronger unless they're stressed. So we've got to put weight to that leg to get the quad to fire, get the hamstring to fire, get the glute to fire, get everything firing so they can get more stability in that knee and trust it. There is so much better technical advances in what the surgeons can do to help. I hesitate to say speed up the recovery of ACLs because it's not about the speed, and that's one of our keys down a little bit later. But the fixations that they use, if they use a hamstring graft, the screws or buttons they use, those are much stronger. They're holding better, so we can be a little bit more aggressive with it. The size of the incisions. I remember sometimes in my presentations, I put a slide of a gentleman I had who had ACL reconstructed in 1985, and his incision was 18 inches long. I mean, it looked bigger than our total knee incisions now. So technical advances have really helped us progress through the rehab process a little bit more efficiently, and to help them learn to trust the knee. There's an isometric series. They're not going to get in any trouble doing a wall sit or a sustained lunge or a split squat. All that's going to help fire their quad, their glute, their hamstring, their calf, get everything working to help stabilize that knee. And that's a very, very safe way to get them to learn to trust the knee and to learn what they can do at home. And again, I got no financial incentive if you go to my website or YouTube, but a lot of this information is there for you to use as you want to in the clinic, and share with your patients if you like. Again, like Amanda said, there's a Q&A that we'll hit at the end, and I'll answer as many questions as we have time for, and if I'll stay as long as it takes to get them all answered. So number 3, strengthening the hip cuff. When I first came out of PT school in 1999, one of the big focuses at that point in terms of knee rehab was strengthening the VMO. We would do straight leg raises with the toe externally rotated a little bit. We would do wall sits with our toes externally rotated. We do a leg press, squeezing a ball, everything to try to get more emphasis on the VMO. Now, we all knew we couldn't isolate the VMO, but we thought doing those things would help get more emphasis on the VMO and help with the tracking of the knee and help with the conditioning and the mobility and the dynamic stability of the knee. Well, it makes sense now, many studies later, that if you look at the size of the gluteus maximus here, that's such a big muscle. Okay, that's going to play a lot bigger role in what's going on with the knee than that little VMO. I'm a big believer, and all our therapists at Holt PT are big believers in the knee is stuck between the ground and the hip. And the best way to control that knee is to really work on hip stability. I tell our patients all the time, and anybody in our clinic who has a lower extremity injury, we work on strengthening the hip cuff. We work on dynamic stability, dynamic mobility activities. The hip is a ball and socket joint. If somebody comes into you with a rotator cuff injury, which is also a ball and socket joint, what do? We work on strengthening the rotator cuff. That's fine. That's not a problem. Everybody's doing it. Well, why aren't we strengthening the hip cuff? I like to use the term hip cuff. Like I said, it's a ball and socket joint. We need to strengthen that. You sit here and so if we take a picture or take a look here, we got your gluteus medius, which you know plays a big role in hip and pelvis stability. Your gluteus maximus is considered the cottage of wattage, or the powerhouse. We have the gluteus minimus as well. Then the piriformis, the gemellis, the obturators, all those little stabilizer muscles, those are critical. And one of my soapbox speeches is foam rolling the IT band. The IT band comes off the TFL. If you don't have good hip stability and good strength in your hip cuff, then the TFL is going to tighten up to stabilize your hip and your pelvis in single leg stance. Well, of course, the IT band is going to be tight. So we have all these runners that are running, they got IT band tightness, and I was just as guilty of it as everybody else. But, you know, as clinicians, we have to adapt and evolve based on research and what we see in the clinic. I mean, I think everybody shies away from anecdotal or experiential research or data, but it's what we see all day and every day. So instead of foam rolling and beating up that IT band, why don't we work on strengthening up the hip cuff? And I'm not saying it doesn't need some soft tissue work or some dry needling, but if we loosen it up and don't fix the problem, it's going to come right back. So it's critical to strengthen up the hip cuff. There's all kinds of mini band videos that are out there. Again, on our website, there's one there, but you have to work on strengthening up the hip cuff. So if you look here, and I'm gonna cross my fingers, here's one of our ACL basketball girls. She is band around her ankle, band around her knees, and she's doing cowboy walks. Her glutes are on fire by this point. She's already done her dynamic warm-up. What I sometimes do, if it's an early on post-op ACL, instead of having them squat down and get into flexion, I'll have them do it with their knees straight. This position that she's in right here will get her quads, hamstrings, and glutes. If they go knees straight, it's going to be all glutes, and that's not a bad thing. If we look over here on this other slide, then I have them do three-way reach. So she's going to do 10 repetitions going medially, and I have them do that on both legs. and then she'll do 10 repetitions going posterior medial, and then 10 repetitions going posterior. So I didn't see all that, but again, you can find those videos. You have to really work on strengthening up the hip. I'm going to play this slide on the right again. You see her left leg's the one doing all the work. I want that stable and not moving at all. She's getting a little lazy on me and letting it wobble some. I want that left leg nice and stable. It's not the right leg that's doing the work. It's the left leg trying to stabilize. So again, strengthening the hip cuff is important and critical in rehab. So understanding the mental grind. I was very fortunate. My college tennis coach at East Carolina was also a sports psychologist, and he helped me tremendously in learning how to help an athlete through adversity. And adversity can be something going on in the field, going on the court, something in their personal life, or also recovering from an injury. And a lot of times athletes don't, they have a hard time after they get injured. They can't believe that their body failed them. They failed their family, their teammates, their coach, maybe their fans, their agent. You know, there's a lot of mental stress on higher level athletes, but also on our regular general population. You know, this lady, you know, needs to be able to take her kids to soccer games, and I think she was one of the kids' soccer coaches and stuff. So there's pressure and stress for everybody, but it's also a mental grind. It's not a 6-week deal and you're done. You know, it's 12, 14, 16, 18, 24 weeks, and it can be a grind. That's one of the things that I think the AlterG helps with the most. You'll see the protocol here in a minute for the AlterG. At 4 weeks, maybe even 5, depends on, you know, they have to be ready for it. But we start getting our ACL patients into the AlterG somewhere between the 4th and 5th week. It gives them something back. They're already tired of riding the bike. They feel like they're making strides in their rehab. They get a good sweat. It makes them feel good. It mentally makes them feel better. And that the AlterG plays a big role in that. I like it, you know, for the mental aspect, but also, you know, at 5 weeks, they're 50% body weight. At 6 weeks, they're 55. At 7, they're 60. And it goes on. You know, we typically don't let our ACLs run on land until 12 weeks post-op. Well, for those of you that don't have an AlterG, you know, you go from biking and you can't run to say, okay, now let's try running. And we all know they look horrible those first few weeks of running. Well, I can speak from experience when we use the AlterG, when they go 50% to 55, 60, 65, by the time they get to that 12th week, they've already been running, you know, 1 day a week, you know, for, you know, 7 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever it is. And the transition is seamless and it's smooth. And it's just much quicker, much safer. So again, the AlterG helps them tremendously with the mental grind. I also think it's not a bad idea, especially your higher level people, or even your area youth soccer players, you know, to get them with a sports psychologist. Most cities, towns have a good sports psychologist, and you don't go sit in their office on a leather couch and lay back and talk about your parents. You know, that they'll meet you out in the court or on the field and help you overcome that injury mentally. What happens is, you know, I don't need somebody going after a soccer ball 80% because they're worried they get hurt again. They will get hurt again if they go after a ball 80%. I need them going after a ball 100%, and that can help. So and here's the protocol, and Anna Hartman's one who did this for AlterG, and she was a colleague of mine. I worked at Athletes Performance here in Raleigh, which is now Exos, and she was out in Arizona. And you see post-op week 4, they have them initiate them on the walking on the treadmill, 65% body weight. Like I said, 5th week, they're at 1%. 6th, it goes up a little bit. Their intervals, you go a minute on, minute off, walk, jog. Well, by the time you get to the 11th week, they're at 95% of their body weight, and they're doing it for, you know, 10 intervals. And then next thing we do, we take them over and they go run on the land, and it's just a much smoother transition. And we've been extremely happy with what it's been able to do with our ACLs. It also helps us get a bunch of ACLs. Patients now are educated consumers, and they'll come check out the facility, you know, see what it's like. Because one of the things, we're seeing a ton of these 12-week post-op ACLs who go somewhere else for rehab, and they come in and see us, and they see one of our patients at 6 weeks and they're at 12 weeks and they're doing the same thing, and they get a little frustrated. One, I think we do it better than everybody in our area. I'm sure there's plenty of better ones out there across the country, but we also have the staff the education and the equipment to handle these patients. And the AlterG is certainly a big role in that. And it's not a hard sell once they see that and say, hey, we're going to have you back running in 4 to 5 weeks. The fifth of the seventh key points for optimizing your ACL rehab is be aware of that danger zone. That's weeks 8 to 11 in general. And we tell our patients 100 times, it's in their emails that they get, that weeks 8 to 11, and we consider it the danger zone. The reason I say that, it takes bone 6 to 8 weeks to heal. If you remember Wolff's Law, things grow or get stronger when they're stressed. Well, the bone, the tunnels, the femoral tunnel, the tibial tunnel, all those are growing and healing and getting stronger this first 6 to 8 weeks. Once the bony structures have healed up, then the graft starts taking some of the load. Then the graft starts getting stronger. But just think of that 8-week mark, patients feel good. They got full range of motion. They're walking normally, decent quad strength. And I call it the, hey, y'all, watch this phase. We're down here in the South. They do something stupid that they shouldn't do, and then they may compromise their graft. Fortunately, we, knock on wood, we haven't had any of those in our facility during that phase. And I think it's because we just really hammer home what you can and what you can't do. Now, this isn't a phase that they can't do anything. And my picture here is a group of our ACLs doing planks, working on core strength. We see it over and over and over, especially in young female athletes. They don't have good core strength, and a lot of that goes back to the hip stability. They don't have good hip stability strength, and that may be part of the reason that they're tearing their ACLs and having some difficulties. The girl here in the front, as you can see, her form is horrible. The reason I put this picture in, she's one of the ones who came to us 12 weeks post-op, and the other ones, and she's actually now like 14 in that picture, and these ones behind her are 6 weeks post-op. So you've got to start working on this stuff early on. Also, during this danger zone, if they're a soccer player, they're going to need their upper body as well. You got to work on strengthening the upper body, keep working on the core, work on the flexibility. You can start doing some bike sprint intervals to work on cardio. During this dead zone or danger zone, doesn't mean you can't do anything. It just means we're not doing plyometrics yet. We're not doing a ton of loaded rotational things. So make your client aware of this danger zone, but then also make sure you're doing some good, fun things with them. It's a great time to do some high intensity interval training circuits where you incorporate upper body, lower body, core, total body, any type of setup that you want to do. And the sixth one, so we'll spend a couple minutes here. It's not about the time. We get questions all the time, my doctor just released me, but I don't feel like I'm ready. And I think the doctors are getting better with it. But just because they're at 6 months post-op doesn't mean they're ready to be discharged. It's not about the time. It's about what you do during that time. Take the example I gave you of the clients who come to us 12 weeks post-op. They did rehab at another place. Like, this is a hard conversation I have to have with them. I'm like, I know it's 12 weeks ago you had your surgery, but you're at 6 weeks right now. And I'll ask them, what have you been doing? What's your home exercise program? They're like, straight leg raises, mini squats, calf raises, riding the bike. Well, that's at 12 weeks post-op. That's not, they need to be doing a lot more than that. And that's where our experience working with the Carolina Hurricanes, really helped me in terms of pushing that envelope a little more. Lots of higher level athletes at our institute. We've rehabbed over probably $100 million worth of professional athletes ACLs. And the one constant about them, one, they're extremely motivated, and there's 100 million reasons why, but they always wanted more. What else can I do? What else can I do? What else can I do? So and not everybody's a professional athlete, I get it, but we can do more with our clients than what we're doing. Research shows that it holds up. Testimonial shows that it holds up. You're doing them a disservice by not pushing them hard enough. So again, it's not about the time, it's what you do during that time. We really need to focus on making sure they're getting enough out of every visit that they need. Part of that is we have to make sure patient compliance. If you schedule them twice a week, you need them come twice a week. You need them doing their home exercise program, the 3 or 4 days a week. I think everybody should take one day off. Give them this talk early about, hey, I can't make any promises if you return to basketball in December, because that's time. It's what we do during this time frame that we have, and only you and I are in control of that, and I'm only part of it. Then lastly, this is highly debated, and there's a lot of different things. And before we even get to this, there's two different kinds, in my opinion, of ACL tears. There's the contact ACL tears and the non-contact. And there's all kinds of, they're called injury prevention or ACL prevention programs. And I don't like the word prevention because we can't prevent it, but we can reduce the likelihood of it. The contact ACL tears, those are extremely hard for us to try to eliminate. If somebody gets hit from the side of the knee when they're planted, we can do all the strength that we want to in the world, that knee probably is not going to hold up. Willis McGahee, Frank Gore, all these guys who get hit in the front of the knee, when their foot's planted and they tear everything out, no sports metrics strengthening program is going to help with that. But then there's the non-contact ones, and those where I feel like it's a movement deficiency, movement imbalance, some sort of asymmetry, and that's what we need to be able to pick out as physical therapists and as clinicians. For rehabbing somebody's right knee, we got to focus and also work on that left knee. We don't want to have any issues there. We've got 6 months to really work on getting this athlete better, so why don't we make sure both sides are better? So some of the ways that we can do that is through a functional movement screen. And I think most of you should be familiar with that. It's 9 different tests, the high, or 7, and then a couple screens. The highest you can get is a 21. I personally never seen a 21. I think the rotary stability to get a 3 is impossible. But the research and data shows that if you score 14 or less, you're more likely to sustain a knee injury. If you go above 14, then you're kind of out of the woods. It's a screen. It's not an assessment. That's something we need to keep in mind. We also like to do the Y balance test. And so if you're not familiar with that, it's a slide apparatus where they do basically a forward slide, a posterior lateral slide, and a posterior medial slide. And you compare the affected leg versus the unaffected, and we want less than a 4% difference. At least that's what our criteria is, a 4% difference between involved and uninvolved, or affected and unaffected. Then we get into some hop tests, and these are all supported heavily in the literature. We'll do a single leg hop for distance. They'll get 3 tries. We'll do right versus left and compare. Again, we want to try to get that. My criteria is 4%. And then we'll do single leg hop for time. And that's they go for 6 meters. And how long does it take them to get 6 meters? I don't care if they take 2 leaps or if it's 20. It's point A to point B, which is a distance of 6 meters. How long does that take? Then there's a crossover hop where they're in a straight line, and they have to hop over 3 times right, left, right, in terms of over the line, and we measure that distance and compare that right versus left. And then finally we do a broad jump, and that's a double broad jump. I just want to see what they look like. The patients that were getting that rehab somewhere else, and it could be 6, 7, 8 months later, they come to us for kind of return to sport testing, and almost every single one of them, we had a guy yesterday at 36, and he's 9 months out. If it passes the eyeball test, you look at the guy, he's jacked. You think he's going to be fine. Passes the eyeball test, but he had about a 36% deficit in these tests here, and it was all single limb power and explosive power. So we really, we've got a program set up for him for the next 4 to 6 weeks to see if we can minimize that and get him a little bit better there. Getting back to the time thing, real quick, I left one thing out there. We used to, and again, I was guilty of all these things, and this is what I like doing talks like this: share our knowledge, share our education, so we can all as a practice and as a profession get better. Everybody used to be in this race. How quickly can we get the ACLs back? Is it 6 months? Is it 9 months? Is it 4 months? But what we need to focus on now, and what we try to focus on, is how long can they stay healthy after we get them back. My example I use with this is David West of the NBA. He tore his ACL 6 years ago, I believe, maybe 7 by now, when he played with the New Orleans Hornets, and he was a free agent. We were able to do his ACL rehab, and we had him for a good 6 months, and he was probably ready to go back into the NBA at that point. But I think, to his blessing, there was a lockout that year, and we got 2 extra months to rehab him. So we got the 7th and 8th month, and he has now played healthy again, knock on wood, in the NBA for the last 6 years and just won his first NBA ring with the Golden State Warriors last year. So I tell the parents and the athlete, here's a good example. It's not how quickly we can get you back. It's how long can you stay healthy after we get you back. If I get you back in 6 months and you tear your meniscus a month later, that's not a successful outcome. We want to make sure you're ready. And a lot of that comes to these functional tests that we have to get through and pass. And if they don't pass, that's not a reflection on you as a therapist or them as a patient. It's just, it is what it is, but it helps identify what we need to work on. So here's a couple of videos. I think this is the, might be the triple hop, we'll see. Here's the crossover. So you see it's 3 hops. And we'll measure that distance. She'll get 3 trials, right versus left, and we'll do that. If you look over here on the right, this is the one who's doing dynamic earlier. She was worn out at the end of this, and so she takes a little fall here towards the end, but they're working super hard. You know, we got to get her back onto the basketball court, and you want to get her back in their element as quickly as you can and really work on some functional moves, functional training. Here's where she loses it right here. Oh, not yet. There you go. You know, put me in, coach. This is where you want to prove to the coach, prove to the athlete, prove to the agent that they're ready to get back to the sport. If I want them doing their harder stuff with us, and they're going to do on their own. And again, it's critical to get them to this stage where there's very little, if any, deficit between involved and uninvolved side. So when I was asked to do ACL rehab in 30 minutes, I thought the best thing to do is come up with these kind of 7 key points to optimizing your rehab. Certainly reach out to me anyway. Here's our social media handles. If you want to reach out to me in any fashion, I'll be happy to send you a copy of our protocol flow sheet or answer any questions that we may have in terms of rehab down the road. And we're pretty active on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and do a lot of posts. We have especially through our ACL Institute at Holt PT Facebook handle, but we get them on all of them. So take a look there. I think you can learn a lot of stuff and share some stuff, and tag me with some stuff that you're doing that's pretty cool and interesting and maybe new, and I can start using it in my clinic. I appreciate your time, and hopefully we got a few questions. If not, you can get them out to me later.
Hey, Jamie, thank you so much. And thank you to all of you who are on the call and have been sending in questions. We've got some great questions for you. So let's get started. And as a reminder, if anyone has anything to add, you can type it into the Q&A box, and we'll make sure that Jamie gets to your questions. So the first one is, how many people do you see at your ACL Institute? And did creating the Institute increase the number of patients that came to Holt PT?
So good question. Currently, I'd probably say it's still around 40. We have 40 active post-op ACL patients on our schedule. You know, you discharge 2 or 3 and then you gain 2 or 3. But our number's been around 40. I've been in practice, in my own private practice, for 2.5 years. Over the past, I'd say 9 to 12 months, we've kind of held steady at that 40 post-op ACL patient number. You know, it fluctuates certain times a year. By developing the Institute, I think what that did is it just separated us from the regular PT clinics. And I'll get patients to come to see us, and you know, first question is, do we only see professional athletes? No, we see active people, you know, athletic people, and everybody's an athlete in my opinion, but we're not suited for everybody. You got to want to work hard. If you're not going to work hard, it will help you find a better place for you. But by establishing that institute and putting some information out there and putting some literature out there, and that's why I love social media so much. You know, you can put some information out there and help educate the patient population. And then if and when they need something, they're gonna be like, hey, you know, I remember seeing all these posts, you know, from Holt PT and the ACL Institute. You know, my daughter just tore ACL. I want to send them to the best. So it has helped us really kind of focus what type of patients we're going to see, and then also if anybody's searching for a PT to rehab the ACL, it pops up pretty easily on searches.
Okay, great. The next one is, what do you tell your surgeons about initiating the AlterG at 5 weeks post-op? How did you get them on board for early initiation of running? And are they apprehensive of it so soon in protocol?
So that's, again, they are good questions, Amanda, you're right. So I've been in Raleigh 18 years, and so I've established pretty good relationships with the surgeons in the area. And me being a private practice, I've got relationships with surgeons from 5 different orthopedic groups. As soon as we got the AlterG, I invited them all to come take a look at it, try it out so they could see it. I sent them the protocol that I just showed you. And there's protocols for different, I sent the hip scope protocol to our hip doctors, total joint protocol, just to let them know, hey, but I did ask. I said, I'd like to use it. Here's why I think it can be beneficial for your patient. And the reason we get a ton of ACLs is, all the doctors that send us patients, they have their own PTs downstairs. But my sales pitch to them was, the better your patient looks, the better you look. Nobody really asks who did your rehab. They're like, who did your surgery? Oh, Dr. So-and-so. Well, if I can make their outcome better, that makes the doctor look better. And then ultimately that's more money for the doctor. So I explained to them, this will help us make your patient, have a better outcome. I do get, completely honest, I do get a little bit of pushback just from a couple, from the older ones. But that's 9 out of 10 doctors. They have no problem with it. They want to know more about it. They follow me on social media and see what we're doing. The one in particular I'm thinking about where I got a little bit of pushback, this kid had a meniscus repair, and there's ongoing debates in terms of like, when can you weight bear and all this kind of stuff. And in my opinion, the doctor's been extremely conservative. He doesn't want him getting into AlterG until 12 weeks post-op, and he wants him at 40% body weight at that point, which, he's walking now, so, and that's 50% of his body weight. But, I'm not going to, I pick my battles with those guys, but 9 times out of 10, they don't have a problem with it. And the more they see it, and when their patient goes back and sees them for 8-week, checkup post-op, and the patients tell them about the AlterG, how much they love it, and they see how they're doing with their walking and their quad and their hip. It's a pretty easy sell, but you may have a little bit of apprehension at the beginning, but I think you'll overcome that with your successful outcomes.
Thank you. So do your weekly alerts help with patient success and retention?
We can tell which ones read it and which ones don't, because we put stuff in there in terms of certain things that typically happen during that period. And I'll get a question like, hey, my kneecap's kind of popping around a little bit. Well, that happens during a certain phase when your swelling goes down. At first, your swelling is what's stabilizing your kneecap. Once we get the swelling out of there, your kneecap's kind of floating around and you get a little clicking, a little bit of popping. And generally 2 weeks after that starts with a little bit more quad strengthening, that goes away. So I always get the question, that question, I'm like, you haven't been reading your emails, have you? And they're like, well, my parents get it. So we make sure we send it to the parent and the athlete. But we try to verbally educate them, face to face, but some people are verbal, listeners. Some people like to read stuff. Some people like to be demonstrated. So it's just another avenue for us to get information in front of them and get them to buy into what's going on. Every patient has our cell phone number, so if they have any questions or problems, they can reach out to us, but it allows them to go back to those emails and say, is this normal? Oh, he says it's going to happen and it's happening, so that's normal. I don't have to bug Jamie, and send them a text message at 11:30 at night. But it's just an extra, once you set up these templates, it's an automated thing. So it's just an extra thing that we can give our patient. So we're big believers in giving them value, for their dollar. And that's one of the things we try to do to make that happen.
Thank you. At the ACLs that start their rehab with you, around what time or around what month are you doing your single leg hop testing?
So I'll do that somewhere around 14 to 16 weeks. Again, because it's not, I expect them all to kind of fail it at that point. But then that gives us a game plan, for the next 4 to 6 weeks on what we really need to focus on. Maybe a couple of things we need to clean up on the FMS. But I think sometimes they feel good. They've got no pain. They think their quad is good. Their range of motion is good. But when we show them, you haven't tried doing this yet, and if you're going to play volleyball or basketball, you need to be able to do this. Then they say, yeah, I'm not quite ready yet. So that mental thing comes in a little bit. They kind of get knocked down a little bit, but then we can quickly pick them back up with it. But here's our game plan. We may only see them once a week at that point, or once every 2 weeks, but here's what I need you working at home, at the gym. Here's our game plan. we'll come back and retest you in 4 weeks, 6 weeks maybe, and we should be good to go at that point. So that's a very good question.
Thank you. Well, Jamie, I think those are our questions for today. On behalf of everyone, thank you so much for presenting and sharing all of this great information. And thank you all for joining us today. Our next webinar will be on Wednesday, September 20th at 10 a.m. And it's on creating a run analysis program for your practice. And if you would like to get in touch with Jamie or learn more about his ACL Institute, you can do so on any of the channels on the slide in front of you. And we'll be communicating by email after the seminar. So thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Thank you, everybody.